last couple of months, I've seen a lot of talk around Waizowl, specifically whenever it came to the OGM Pro and the Cloud that got dropped. The build quality, performance, and just the overall mouse itself. I have the OGM Pro XS. I probably need a regular size, but I have a couple thoughts whenever it comes to the XS, so let's get into it. All right, so getting into the OGM Pro XS, it comes in at 45 grams. Build quality wise, there's two things that I wanted to talk about. Number one, I do have a little bit of creaking overall on the shell of the mouse, really just picking it up, having any kind of light movement or pressure on the mouse. I have like a little creak and then it goes away. The second thing and the main thing that I wanted to talk about is the scroll wheel. So typically whenever you use a mouse, either one of two things happens whenever you use a scroll wheel. Either one, it's built like this one, where it goes all the way to the right and you get an actuation whenever you push it all the way to the right, or it just doesn't move at all and it just goes up and down, and it should stay that way. This is the first one, so it has an actuation to the right, but my issue is moving it to the right, it essentially wobbles in and out of place, and then you can move it all the way to the right. So instead of being fluid all the way to the right and coming back, I have a little bit of wobble in the beginning, but overall, outside of a tiny bit of creaking and the scroll wheel, overall build quality is really solid. I have zero issues with any kind of flexing anywhere on the shell. One of the things that I do want to mention too is, one, it doesn't feel cheap compared to other mice that I've tried. Like whenever you try something like Skyrocks, I love both mice that came from Skyrocks, but overall whenever you grab it, it feels cheap. This doesn't feel cheap. Two, whenever we talk about kind of build quality in general, one of the things that I like about this mouse is the coating that they used. Personally, I think it is really grippy. Outside of build quality and the coating, one of the things that I like about this mouse too is the optical switches. This is probably the first time that I've used Raisha optical switches and actually enjoyed using them. Generally, I feel like Raishas tend to feel like they're a little hollow. You still get that tactile, quick, responsive feeling, but they don't feel as crispy as something like Omron's. But these feel pretty good, honestly. At least in terms of Raisha's, probably the best Raisha implementation I've seen on a mouse. They do have a little bit of pre-travel, but really the switches still feel tactile and spammable, so there's really no issues with that. Side buttons feel really good as well. Really don't have any issues with any kind of side play or anything like that. Scroll wheel feels good as well. Again, I mean, outside of the movement left to right, scroll wheel itself up and down feels great, feels notchy. Shape-wise, it's a good shape, but it's not the best for my hand size. Typically, whenever I hold a mouse, because of the height of the mouse and the side button placement, having my hand here, my thumb just feels super cramped, and I don't really feel like I can just use the mouse where it's super comfortable. One of the other things that I want to mention as well is whenever you think of any mice that I have on my desk, so the XM2 is still flat as it goes across the mouse button. This kind of curves up. I mean, it's not completely flat. I mean, it kind of curves up just a tiny bit. So it's kind of like a reverse finger groove. It's not anything that affects you during gameplay, but whenever you have other mice that have finger grooves to provide more comfort, this is doing the opposite. It's not providing as much comfort as it could. Outside of the shape, whenever we talk about the stock skates, the ice skates that the mouse comes with are actually really good. I actually really like these stock skates. Really no need to switch them out. They perform well on cloth and glass. I had no issues with the sensor implementation, no issues with the battery. I've been able to use it for a couple days, and I think I've maybe charged it once. So I haven't charged it outside of that one time, and I've been using it for a while. Really, in terms of performance, this performs really well still. I perform really well on it. It's just the overall comfort I get whenever I do any kind of target switching, any kind of tracking, It's just not as comfortable as it could be. Again, specifically for my hand size, specifically for my grip, I think it might work for those with smaller hands, but just the way that I typically grip a mouse, it's not as comfortable for me as something like the XM2, which is definitely bigger. The Waizowl OGM Cloud XS. Without repeating myself, build quality extremely solid with the exception of the issue that I have on the scroll wheel. Really, outside of that, build quality is incredibly solid. The Reichas are honestly one of the best Reicha implementations that I've seen on a mouse. Stock skates are really good. Overall, I think the mouse is a good mouse. I think it's just not really, it's not good for my hand size. I think if you're looking for something like the XM2, or if you've already tried the OGM Cloud and you wanted something that's smaller, I think this is definitely something that you could potentially look at. So if you have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the comment section down below, and I will catch you all next time. Start a riot.